Leibniz said, "Why does something exist rather than not?" There has to be a reason for this in nature. And what does Steven Weinberg say? The more the universe seems comprehensible, the more pointless he seems. In many world religions, for example, in Christian or Jewish culture, there is such a solid foundation. It is some creator according to his will. Let the universe be born. However, we have seen the problem with this assumption. It's more than it solves. And over the centuries, he was even inspired by theologians' own seriousness. What's the problem? Due to the nature of time. We know today, space and time are inseparable. Time is like matter. It's a natural part of the universe. Time has its own changes. There are also behavioral patterns. These laws clearly belong to the paradigm of physics. If time belonged to the natural universe, and it's governed by the laws of physics, then time must be included in the play as God, in the universe of creation. That's according to our usual understanding of causality. The reason for one thing must have shifted in time to the result he caused. So God is the reason for the existence of time. What do you mean? Cause and effect is a temporal activity, right? That in anything, before becoming the result of a cause, you have to have time first. What if time doesn't exist? If not before? The sentence that created the universe before the universe. There is a logical problem in itself. I'm not here to raise these questions. St. Augustine, as early as the 5th century. The problem. What about a century later? Abalone Hughes specifically addresses these issues and turned them into something called the tron, the concept of life. This concept, than most laymen, still familiar concept, more abstract, more difficult to understand. What's his point of view? God exists outside of time and space. In a sense, God is beyond nature, rather than preceding nature. God outside of this time is considered to be holding the existence of the universe at every moment. He takes this more powerful ways to create the universe. What about this God? Didn't simply start the universe. He was always moving. Then a kind of God is the God of time. He created the universe, is the cause of the creation of the universe. What about the other kind of God? Is a God beyond time. He controls the universe, including time in the universe. Now, let's put it figuratively. What's the difference between these two founding concepts? Suppose there is a series of events. Each event depends on the previous event. What about this chain of events? It can be expressed as series of 1, a 2, a 3, etc., row back by event. For example, the reason for a 1 is a 2, for a 2 is a 3, and so on. And that creates a causal chain. These events are governed by a set of physical laws. It works. Let's define this law of physics as L. Then the first creationism. God is the cause of the universe. What about this concept? We can replace God with the letter G to express his position is the first item in the causal chain. That's the far left of the British chain. So except in this location, there's no room for him. Equivalent to he is only responsible for the first drop of this gear in the universe. Why is that? Because we're on the chain. Every will see a standard law of physics. That is, the L we just mentioned. This law of physics, it won't change at any time. It is a fixed L, like the second one just mentioned. If God is beyond time, then he can't belong to this causal chain. He is beyond the causal chain. A causal chain is maintained at every junction. That is to say, the dollar we see on this British quantity tone LHL. There is such a G on the back. That is, God is working behind the scenes. What's the difference between the two claims? The first way of saying it, so God is the cause of the universe. What about the second theory? In fact, God is the explanation of the universe. Laws of physics. It's the regularity with which things happen, presented to us. The planet is precisely in its orbit. Regular fringes on the spectrum of elements. It's all regular. In a moving car, if you step on the brakes, the car will slow down. If you light gunpowder, gunpowder will explode. The hot flame will melt the ice cubes. The vase will shatter when it falls on a hard floor. The world is not messy. There's no pattern. He was predictable, at least to some extent. It's orderly. So let's start from a limited perspective of time and space. Explain these regularities in terms of cause and effect. Like what? The attractive force of the sun is the cause of the bending of the Earth's orbit. Wait a minute, but there is another possibility, isn't there? God is the cause of all events in the world. God is beyond our universe, affect our universe. He carefully arranges every moment. Let them show regularity. Suppose you have a machine gunner. There is a handle in front. What about this machine gunner? Shoot the handle at a constant speed. As a result, there is a spacing on the upper handle, the same pattern of holes. What about this time? Is there such a creature? They can only live on the plane of the gun handle. They're two-dimensional creatures. How would they feel about this chain of events? They think so. In their world, this hole appears regularly. And he looked at this hole. We'll infer the formation of holes is not random. It's cyclical. And the layout of the holes. There is also the simplicity of geometry, students. The spacing between them is the same. So what? These two creatures will confidently announce new laws of plane physics, law of whole creation. That is to say, the appearance of every hole, all in a regular manner, causes the next hole to appear. This to creatures received from him from the perspective of a limited binary world. So there's no real reality at all. All the holes, in fact, they are completely unrelated to each other. The regularity of his layout, it's all the actions of that shooter. Same thing, the orderly operation of the universe can also be explained in the same way. God comes from a broader context, in an organized manner, created every moment. A broader context could be higher temperature spaces, is a physical structure that is not space. It's a completely non-physical structure. What does he mean? Let's not discuss it. Now, how do we know that this is true? Look at the complex structure and delicate organization of the universe. Think about the mathematics behind the laws of physics. Look at the arrangement of matter, from spinning galaxies to finely stained atomic activity. All matter is arranged in an orderly manner. Why is there such a universe? There is such a set of laws. Is there such a material and energetic arrangement? In a nutshell, why would anything exist? Everything in the natural universe, every event, they all depend on things outside of them to be explained. You want to explain a phenomenon. It has to be explained by another phenomenon. But suppose this phenomenon is everything that exists, the entire natural universe. Then, according to the definition of the universe, beyond the universe, there's obviously nothing physical anymore to explain the universe. So any explanation of the universe, it must be something non-physical and supernatural. In religion, this thing is called God or Buddha, or something else. The reason why the universe is like this, because God wants him to. Science, by definition, it's the study of the natural universe. He can make it with something in the natural universe to explain another thing. Explain the thing in terms of other things, but the totality of natural things. But it has to be explained from outside nature. Then God's explanation. In the realm of religion, it can be said to be perfect, but scientists are not convinced. Scientists have to ask further, what is God's explanation? If God created the universe, where did God come from? That's the answer a theologian would give. God is inevitable. No need to explain. He contains himself. Existential explanation. But in this case, scientists must still disagree. Then if you can say so, we also can the same argument be used to explain the universe? The universe is inevitable. The universe is already within him, contains the reason for his own existence. No need to explain. In fact, this view comes from the idea that the scientist will like. It's a natural system, contains his own interpretation. In other words, it's kind of a contradiction. But this idea, there is a certain superiority in physics. One can assume that all events are accidental, need to be explained by other events. This is no problem, but there is no need to draw conclusions at the same time. Think of this causal chain as either infinitely long, or it ends with God. What about this train? He may close in a circle, like 4 times or 15. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4 can be a 1 resulting in a 2. A 2 leads to a 3. A 3 leads to a 4. What about a 4? Which finally leads to a 1. Form a closed loop. There is the exact same theory as this hypothesis. Once upon a time, some particle physicists, it's pretty widespread. What do these physicists think? Matter is made up of molecules. Molecules are made of atoms. That atom is made up of electrons and nuclei. The nuclei are going down. It's the proton and the circumference. There's always been a popular belief. This idea has been around since ancient Greece. Think that this chain of explanations will have an end. Is this the end? There are a lot of really basic examples. Seamless, can't be divided again. It's the building block of all matter. In fact, the word it comes from the Shera language at the beginning, and by that, he meant indivisible. Only later, we're inside the atom again. We found more and smaller structures. So what about now? This theory obtained the so strong experimental support for quark theory. But according to the incredible characteristics of quantum theory, there's another image. Quantum theory holds that there is no such thing as a basic example. Ideas, every example, are made up of other examples. No example is the most basic or original. Each particle all contain some properties of all other particles. That's a lot of particles. It creates itself in a self-explanatory circle. It forms a system. That's what we were talking about. Form a circular causal chain. But how to explain it this way? There's another problem. As if we don't need an explanation. The universe is like this. He was accidental, also self-pinching. What if that's the case? Isn't science just like theology coming to an end? Scientists and theologians. There's another argument. Theologians believe that God is independent of the physical world, the spirit of existence. He has ideas, can make decisions. There's even emotion. But at the same time, theologians do not claim God exists independently of time. The scientist asked again, talk about a spirit that exists outside of time. Does it make sense? You want to think decisions and things like that. Didn't it happen in time? That's what I thought about last second. And then the next moment, what decision did I make? What if God exists independently of time? he is unable to make decisions. Then he is responsible for the nature and existence of the universe. What do you mean? In fact, it has developed to this day. The debate between science and theology over the causes of the universe. Just focus on one focus. That is, evaluate a universe that contains its own causes, or evaluate asking God to explain his cause of the universe. These two views, so no matter who is listening to this program. Are you a theist or an atheist? I must clarify something for you. Don't get me wrong here. Scientists are rational, very smart, and theologians are ignorant. They're stupid. Don't have this illusion. In fact, many advanced theologians, the questions they think about are also very profound. It's just the way they think. Not quite like the scientists. And theologians are scientists. Up to now, did not come to a verifiable conclusion. Only we live in a world. The power of science to explain everything around us, more effective than theology. And the closer it is to our lives, the more effective it is. You, for example, have an Apple 10 in your hand. If you believe science made it, then you can replace the same science. Maybe one day I can make you an Apple 11. But if you believe the Apple 10 in your hand was made by God, that's where the explanation ends. You can't count on God will make you another Apple 11, unless he wants to. But this explanation is more scientific than theological. It's about the closer you get to our lives, the more specific the question. Science is more effective, but on big questions like the origin of all things, distant from all of us. Science and theology, it doesn't tell who is really high and who is low. So let's go back to our solution about the universe. Let's solve this problem according to our best scientific understanding of the primordial universe. It seems that the universe does begin in a simplest form. It's called thermal equilibrium. So far, we have observed all the complex structures. And then there's the activity of the universe. It's all initiated after thermal equilibrium. Can you say original universe? Actually, it's the simplest thing we can think of. And if you understand it in the superficial sense, prediction of distant starting points. The universe began at an infinite temperature, the state of infinite density and infinite energy. So there's a theory that makes sense. Here's the thing. Can you prove the complexity and order of the universe? Really from a simple distant state, naturally developed. At first glance, this statement seems to fit the second law of thermology. The second law of thermodynamics is the exact opposite of this hypothesis. He's giving way to order for disorder. It predisposes complex structures to decay into disorder. The simplest state. There was a man named Barnes. Did you write that in 1930? At the beginning, must have the largest energy organization. In fact, God once filled a clock with strings. If God stops winding, the clock will eventually stop. What do we know now? That's not true. The distant state of the universe, not the largest organizational state. It's the most complex state. It's about simplicity and balance. This fact, the obvious conflict with the second law of thermology. In fact, it was only recently resolved. So what? Second law of thermodynamics, strictly speaking, only suitable for isolated systems. And to put anything isolated from attractive forces is physically impossible. No attractive force in the world, even if there is a relevant system, can't escape his own attractive force. In an expanding universe, cosmic matter is affected by the cosmic attractive force field. That is, by the universe, other parts of the cumulative attractive force. Then with attractive force it will open, inject an ordered state into the universe through attractive forces. Qualitative approach. We know if there is an external energy supply, can create disorder in a system, at the cost of create order in another system. You know, the heat and the light coming in from the sun caused the highly complex order of the Earth's biosphere. But what about this only through irreversible, sacrificing the limited fuel of the Sun River? The same explosion and expansion of the universe. Order can also be created in cosmic matter. The expansion of the universe. How do you wind a clock instead of God? Let's give an example. As we said earlier, the original cosmic matter was very hot, but the expansion of the universe cooled it down. With basic measurement, it can be concluded that at every stage of the expansion of the universe, the temperature of cosmic matter, every time the area of space doubles, the temperature will be halved. On the other hand, for example, things like relatives, it cools faster. He scales it to the square of the scale. This means that just separate the hydrogen from the radiation. Expanding universe between these two components of cosmic matter produce a temperature difference. Then the temperature difference, in fact, it is an ideal source of energy. It's actually solar energy here on Earth. The secret to life. There is organized energy in our universe today. The vast majority comes from highly reactive hydrogen. It's about 75% of the matter in the universe. It provides fuel for all normal stars. Blue, after the fusion shaft is burned, became something like heavier elements like iron. Iron is just ash. There's no nuclear power available, enclosed in it. So, the orderly existence of stars is mainly hindered by light, more than hindered by iron. And this can be explained by the expansion of the universe. In the original stage, the temperature is particularly synthetic nucleus. For example, iron cannot exist. There are only the simplest substances like cyanobore to survive. As the universe continued to expand and cool, blue can be turned into some heavier elements. Cosmic matter, it's down this road. But not very far. About 25% of the matter in the universe has come to this point. Only a very small part has passed the harm. That's the reason why the vast majority of matter doesn't go very far. Blame the expansion of the universe. At first, it expanded too fast, make matter too late to go through the necessary complex nuclear into a heavy nucleus like iron. Only a few minutes of explosion, the temperature dropped to below the temperature required for nuclear reaction ignition. This explosion theory, we said it in the previous show. If you forget, you can go back and the nuclear fire went out. Most of the matter, it was frozen in this state of river invasion. After a long time has passed, by the time stars start to form decentralized hotspots, let cosmic matter continue towards the heavier elements. Anyway, in an expanding universe, organized energy can emerge naturally. No need to have it in the first place, so there is no need to put the order of the universe. That's the low quotient state. It boils down to God's activity, or it boils down to, at the very beginning, organized energy input. The starting point may have been released in the first place. There are no rules at all. Very chaotic energy. Energy without rules. Later, under the influence of the expanding universe, spontaneously organized. That is to say, we can not only put the origin of matter, it boils down to the expansion of space. We can also put the origin of the organization of matter. It also boils down to the expansion of space. But at this point, it's not over yet. Ultimately, through the expansion of the universe, and is actually an attractive force field, is the presence of attractive forces that allowed stars to form in a cooled universe. They form sporadic hotspots. But don't forget, we have to keep asking seriously. If attractive force is the cause of everything, that and saying that God is the cause of all things, what's the difference? We can shift the blame to attractive forces and explain how matter becomes ordered. But we have to go on and explain in the beginning how order appears in the attractive force field. So where does this explanation go? What's the problem now? The second law of thermodynamics, does it apply to both substances? Also applies to attractive forces. No one really understands the problem. That's what we said in the previous show. An attractive force in science, really one of the biggest mysteries. Even an attractive force prevented the discovery of the big bucket theory. Recent research on black holes shows some kind of sign. Second law of thermology may apply to attractive forces, but there are also some scientists, through the same observation, found the exact opposite conclusion. You know, physicists, like Roger Penrose. He just said, large-scale cosmic profit field in a state of low quotient. That is to say, at the creation of the universe, it has to be typed in order. And other physicists like Hawking. He thought the attractive force of the universe was highly unnecessary. It doesn't need sequential input at the beginning of creation. The problem with this is that theologians today, scientists, it's even been a concern of philosophers. You might sound a little dizzy talking about this. I don't know what these two factions are fighting for. Let me show you one. Just a simple example, and you will understand. For example, in a box. Suppose all the gas molecules are packed into the four corners. This is obviously a more complicated state. In other words, he is also in a relatively orderly state. So what is the most disordered and balanced state? It's gas distributed evenly throughout the box. If all the gas molecules squeezed into the four corners of the box as an initial state, that over time, in this box, in a small universe, final state, it must be that all the gases are evenly distributed. This is right. So if we now observe this box, gas is concentrated in the four corners. It is necessary to believe that pushing forward at this moment, he must be in a more orderly state. So who is entering this more ordered state? And this is really what we were arguing about. But what does a scientist like Hawking think? On the scale of the universe, if you take the entire universe into a big box, because of an attractive force, the process is just the opposite. Gas in the universe will not be set in stone throughout the universe, but under the action of attractive forces, form a small group, and eventually stars form. In other words, is the attractive force that automatically grows structure. Originally a uniform distribution of matter, under the influence of attractive forces, forming star clusters and dense accumulations, even galaxies. So let's just say that for systems not subject to attractive forces, order means complexity, disorder means simplicity. But for an attractive force system, it's the other way around. You say this attractive force, does it mean that it is a bit against God? But the battle between science and theology, it goes far beyond the order of matter. There's a bigger problem: the laws of physics themselves. In the beginning, the universe was very simple. But the laws of physics make no mistake. They're so many and so special. Where did they come from? Go on. The universe is made up of protons, neutron, meson, electronics, etc. How do you explain that? Why are there only these examples? And why are these examples? They have the mass and the charge. Why are there different types of these subprotist particles? No more, no less. That's all. Of course, theologians have ready-made answers. God wants this. God is infinitely simple, but willing to create complex. The laws of physics of diversity and the composition of matter. His goal is to create an interesting universe. Only recently, Scientists who do not accept this theory, I'm starting to find answers to similar questions. The new progress is the result of a theoretical work. The purpose of this theoretical work, it is to combine the many forces of nature, unified in a single description framework. According to this theoretical framework, the laws of physics are incredibly diverse. It's a purely cryogenic phenomenon. As the temperature of matter rises, forces acting on matter, they're moving towards unification, finally to an extremely high temperature. All the forces of nature rendezvous into a very simple force. It can be expressed in a very simple mathematical formula. And all the many different subatomic particles, they also lose their individuality. They all have different characteristics, will disappear into the heat. Human research on high-energy physics. A conclusion. Evidence that matter tends to be simpler at high temperatures. Of course, this quest is far from over. We can only assume that these ideas are correct. That's for the Big Bang. The theory of frying can have profound implications. At the creation of the universe, at infinite temperatures, the force at work is a simple force. And a few simple examples. The various forces and particles that have differentiated today, only produced as the universe cooled. Well, the state of the universe, laws of physics, and the various components of matter, it all seemed to start when, are in a very simple state. Which brings me back to that, the complexity of the world, from the expansion and cooling of the universe. There are physicists, inspired by this simplicity, propose a point of view, probably the ultimate law. It's a very simple mathematical structure. This means that, just as theologians speak of God as inevitable, physics is also said to be inevitable here, because it comes from mathematics. Even some people say that God is mathematical. There are physicists like Stephen Hawking. He just said, in fact, we should expect the distant states of the universe should be simple. And the reason for that is because the universe originated from the universe. What is the most fundamental characteristic of that starting point? He is like the edge and boundary of time and space, the edge of the natural universe. This means that there is no such thing as nature beyond the edges. An example of a starting is an infinitely dense state. He marked the beginning of the Big Bang. It's thought that there are beginnings in black holes as well. There may be beginnings elsewhere. So far, all our physical theories are all proposed in the context of time and space. So the existence of space-time boundaries means that natural physical processes cannot be delayed, continue beyond this boundary. At the starting point, matter can enter or leave the natural world, make an impact from the beginning, and these effects is completely unpredictable by natural science. It's not even predictable in principle. The starting point is the closest that science has discovered, something supernatural. Speaking of which, you can see why scientists are so popular. Finally, studying black holes. Because of the Big Bang, impossible for our research. Do it again. We want to study the starting point. You have to start with black holes. In the beginning, people also believe the starting point is an over-idealization of the attractive force. It's an artificial thing. Later, in a series of delicate mathematical theorems, Penrose and Hawking prove the starting point is actually quite common and under reasonable physical conditions. Once the attractive force becomes strong enough, a starting point is inevitable. It's a little bit of an exaggeration to say the frontier between theology and science is the starting point. The starting point is the attractive force. Penrose and Hawking. It's just a mathematical proof. If people want to be serious, proof of the treatment of these two people, you have to get away from math. Think about it. What is the behavior of the starting point? All sorts of ideas converge on this. That's what comes out of the beginning. It's either completely disordered or completely unstructured. They can be organized. In the former case, the beginning of the Big Bang just produced a kind of disordered universe. There is no specific order. In the latter case, the universe came into being with a certain degree of organization, more like the strings of a clock. You can start the timer. Stephen Hawking put forward a principle of ignorance. What he means is that the starting point is ultimately unknowable, so there should be no information at all. And in physics, information is pretty much the same word as order. Then if the starting point is no information, he is disordered. And that's what we were talking about. Hawking's theory that the universe originated from disorder, the origin of this idea. Many such views are now at the forefront of physics. So it's only through theory future development will be clarified. And here's the interesting thing. Physicists' question about the beginning of space-time. Opinions are inconsistent. That is, to the original. What is the state of the universe? Is it highly ordered or highly disordered? Such a question. There was no consensus. In other words, recent advances in cosmology, the various ideas that have arisen, the dispute between God and the existence of the universe is not exacerbated. And with the development of biology, that's the argument continued into a whole new realm. What is life? Let's talk about this issue. It's a much bigger issue. There is definitely not enough time today. Let's talk about this first. I'm going to come down for today's show. Have such a feeling. That is, once you get to the deepest questions in physics, you will feel everyday language is becoming less and less sufficient because language comes from words, and we humans make these words. Not to explain the origin of the universe, such a profound question. We start by making words. It means pointing to a big tree and saying this thing is called a tree. Point to a mountain and say this thing is called a mountain. And like what origin? Order, business. Words like structure. We don't see it in our daily lives. A purely abstract word that cannot be described. Even when using these words, you have to use a more pumping, elephant vocabulary to explain. Can you say something like this? Theory is a necessary path for cognition. Diameter. This sentence, it seems to explain the word theory. But you have to ask further, what is cognition? Then you can't always say, cognition is the ability to treat a theory, something that must go through, right? So that means, as the problem becomes more abstract, the natural language invented by humans, it becomes increasingly impossible to express accurately what he meant. The choice of physicists is, we don't use natural language at all. We'll just carry the abstraction through, make sense with math. So you look at some famous subjects you often post in Mink Bali. It is said to deduce relativity without a formula. That's not true. It's not that he doesn't use formulas. It's that he doesn't understand the story, can only be expressed in natural language, and such Mink inference, certainly not able to withstand a blow in the face of mathematics. It's not even worth refuting. But we do shows. I can't read you a pair of mathematical formulas, and some of the mathematical formulas I really don't understand it myself. And I said something really abstract. I can only change some metaphors to help you understand. But you know what? Such a metaphor will always be just a metaphor. He played a supporting role. Can never really represent science itself. If you're confused by today's content, it's really normal. Because this is already a theologian, the ultimate debate with scientists. If it can be solved through one program, then this game is long overdue for a result, right? Then if you have to use a word to help you always, end today's content, I think it's more like this. The end of the causal chain regarding the origin of the universe. Between scientists and theologians. It's inside scientists. One argument is that the universe should have begun with order, or disorder. As a general system, if you ignore him, it must slowly develop from order to disorder. If you follow the rules of the general system to deduce the development of the entire universe, then his start must be very orderly. And this ordered input, either from God, either from A, things that physics cannot currently explain. Hawking believes that the beginning of the universe did not require order. The key here is the attractive force at work. What is the attractive force? Where did he come from? Even why there is an attractive force? No conclusion yet. Maybe the day we uncover the attractive force, the day the end of the universe was discovered. And if you don't understand the mystery of attractive force, you can listen to the special quotes on my program, The Issue of Power. Okay? That's what we're going to talk about. Let's talk next time.